In the darkest corners of D&D's universe lurks a creature so disturbing that most sourcebooks barely mention its true nature. A species whose life cycle is so twisted, so utterly alien, that even veteran dungeon masters often gloss over the details. Banana breakdown here, and welcome to the first episode of D&D Dark Lore, where we will explore the disturbing bits of Dungeons & Dragons that your monster manual whispers about, but never fully explains. Today, we'll investigate the Neogi, spider eel slavers from the stars with a reproductive cycle that would make the xenomorph look positively cuddly. What makes these creatures truly terrifying isn't their appearance, their enslavement of other species, or even their cruel society. It's what happens when they need to make more of themselves. Trust me, you'll want to put down your snacks for this one. Before we get to the truly disturbing bits, let's meet our subjects. Neogi stand about 3 feet tall with 8 arachnid legs supporting an eel-like upper body. Their skin ranges from sickly yellow to muddy brown, often spotted with darker patches. That face? Pure nightmare fuel. All teeth and malice. But their physical appearance barely scratches the surface of their true horror. Neogi are slavers by nature and necessity. Their entire society revolves around owning others, using them, and ultimately, well, we'll get to that. Their culture operates on a rigid hierarchy, where every individual knows its rank. You're either commanding those below, or serving those above. There's no equality, no friendship, just domination and submission. This mindset shapes everything about them, including their rather unique approach to ensuring their species continues. You won't find Neogi in your typical forest encounter table. These creatures primarily inhabit wild space, D&D's version of outer space, where magical ships called spelljammers travel between worlds. They pilot vessels called death spiders, which look exactly as pleasant as they sound. Massive spider-shaped ships designed for interstellar slaving operations. These ships are essentially mobile markets, where Neogi conduct their grim trade. They're not limited to space, though. You'll find them wherever slaves can be bought and sold. They're particularly active in the Underdark, where they find willing trading partners among the drow and other subterranean races, who share their casual disregard for others' freedom. But what happens when Neogi grow old? This is where our story takes its darkest turn. Unlike most creatures who simply grow old and die, elderly Neogi face a fate that defies conventional biology. When a Neogi reaches the end of its natural lifespan, typically around 60 to 80 years, something extraordinary and horrifying begins. The aging process for a Neogi isn't about going grey or getting a bit forgetful. Instead, the elderly Neogi begins to undergo a dramatic physical transformation. Its body starts to swell. And this isn't just putting on a few pounds. We're talking about a radical metamorphosis that will ultimately serve the needs of the colony in the most disturbing way possible. The other Neogi recognize these changes immediately. Their treatment of the elder shifts, not toward reverence or care, but something far more utilitarian. The elderly Neogi is moved to a special chamber within the colony or ship. What happens next marks the beginning of one of the most alien reproductive cycles in fantasy gaming. As the elder Neogi's body continues to change, its mind deteriorates in equal measure. Intelligence and personality fade, replaced by ravenous hunger and base instinct. Its body balloons to grotesque proportions, eventually growing from 3 feet to a bloated monstrosity, up to 20 feet long. This transformed creature has a name in Neogi society, a Great Old Master. But don't let the respectful-sounding title fool you. This entity serves one purpose only, and it's not leadership or guidance. The Great Old Master can barely move, driven only by an insatiable hunger. And the colony is more than happy to satisfy that hunger. This is where things get truly disturbing. The other Neogi begin what can only be described as systematic force feeding. They bring everything they can find, food stores, smaller creatures, even slaves that have outlived their usefulness, and force the great old master to consume it all. This isn't some respectful ritual or honoured tradition. It's mechanical, cold, and calculated. The great old master eats and eats, its body stretching further with each passing day. During this time, something awful is happening inside. The great old master's internal organs are being consumed and replaced by something else. Something that will ensure the continuation of the Neogi species. After roughly a month of constant feeding, the great old master reaches its limit. Its body, now stretched beyond recognition, begins to show signs of strain. The skin becomes nearly translucent, and movement can be seen within. What happens next is the culmination of this horrific process, the moment where the true purpose of the great old master is revealed. But that revelation comes at the ultimate cost. The great old master's body suddenly and violently ruptures. From within pour hundreds, sometimes thousands, of fully formed Neogi hatchlings. These aren't helpless newborns. They emerge with all their instincts intact. The original Neogi, the great old master, is dead, consumed from within by its own offspring. Its final purpose complete, its body nothing more than a discarded husk. But the horror doesn't end with the birth. What follows next defies even the harshest natural selection seen elsewhere in nature. The newly emerged hatchlings, each about the size of a human finger, immediately begin to attack and devour each other. This isn't random violence or behavior gone wrong. It's a built-in population control mechanism. The Neogi hatchlings fight in a cannibalistic frenzy, with only the strongest, most aggressive individuals surviving. The adult Neogi observe this battle dispassionately. They don't intervene. This culling is a critical part of ensuring the colony's strength. From the initial hundreds or thousands of hatchlings, typically only 20 to 40 survive this brutal first test. Those survivors represent the perfect Neogi specimens, the most ruthless, dominant individuals who've proven their worth through the simple act of not being eaten by their siblings. The surviving hatchlings aren't coddled or nurtured. There's no childhood in Neogi society. Instead, they immediately enter the colony at the lowest rank, serving as menial labourers and learning through observation. These survivors watch how the adults dominate slaves, conduct raids, and maintain the strict hierarchy. They learn their place in the order of things, and how to climb that order through domination and cruelty. As they grow, they may rise in rank by demonstrating their ability to control others. Eventually, most will leave to establish their own holdings, continuing the cycle of slavery and predation that defines their species. And of course, when they reach old age, they too will undergo the transformation into a great old master, completing the circle of their disturbing life cycle. This raises the obvious question: why would any species evolve such an extreme method of reproduction? The Neogi reproductive cycle serves several distinct purposes. It ensures population control. The cannibalistic frenzy prevents overpopulation and resource strain. It guarantees only the strongest offspring survive, maintaining the species' predatory edge. It eliminates the burden of caring for the elderly by repurposing them as breeding vessels. And perhaps most importantly, it reinforces the dominance-based psychology of the Neogi from the moment of birth. Some scholars speculate the Neogi weren't always like this. Theories range from magical corruption by some ancient evil to natural evolution in a particularly harsh environment where such extreme reproduction provided advantages. Whatever the truth, this system has allowed the Neogi to spread across countless worlds and planes, a testament to its brutal efficiency. For dungeon masters looking to introduce truly alien and disturbing antagonists, Neogi offer unique storytelling opportunities. A Neogi slave ship raiding a coastal town creates an immediate threat. Your players might discover a Neogi breeding chamber while exploring the Underdark. Perhaps they're hired to investigate disappearances, only to uncover a Neogi colony, preparing a great old master. The reproduction cycle itself can serve as a central plot element. Players might learn of a great old master nearing the eruption phase and face the moral dilemma of whether to interfere with this natural but horrific process. One particularly effective encounter involves players stumbling upon a great old master just as it erupts, forcing them to deal with both the psychological horror and the immediate threat of dozens of hatchlings. For those interested in the game's statistics, Neogi appear in several editions of D&D. In 5th edition, you'll find them in Volo's Guide to Monsters, which provides stats for standard Neogi, Neogi Masters, and Great Old Masters. While not the most physically imposing monsters in terms of raw damage output, Neogi are dangerous due to their intelligence, organization, and enslaved minions. They typically travel with mind-controlled umber hulks, making them formidable opponents despite their relatively small size. A typical Neogi encounter involves multiple Neogi working in concert, using terrain to their advantage, and leveraging their slaves as cannon fodder while they attack from safety. What makes Neogi truly disturbing beyond their appearance and reproduction is their psychology. They represent one of the most alien mindsets in D&D. Neogi are incapable of comprehending concepts like equality, friendship, or mutual respect. Their language doesn't even have words for these ideas. Instead, every relationship is defined strictly by dominance or submission. To a Neogi, everything that isn't a Neogi is property to be acquired or competition to be eliminated. Everything that is a Neogi is either a superior to be obeyed or an inferior to be commanded. This makes them not just difficult to negotiate with, but fundamentally impossible to reason with in conventional terms. You can't appeal to a Neogi's better nature, because by human standards, they don't have one. The Neogi reproductive cycle represents one of the darkest corners of D&D lore, a glimpse into truly alien biology that challenges our understanding of life itself. From their strict hierarchical society to their horrific birthing process, Neogi embody the concept that in the vast multiverse, some creatures operate on principles entirely foreign to our understanding of nature. This has been the first episode of D&D Dark Lore, where we'll be exploring the most disturbing aspects of the game's monsters, cultures, and cosmic horrors. In future episodes, we'll dig into other creatures and concepts that your monster manual might mention only in passing. If there's a particular piece of dark D&D lore you'd like to see covered, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones with the highest challenge rating, but the ones that make you question what it means to be alive. Banana Breakdown. Out.